with when she was high. She glanced over at me with the usual look of disdain and started to load her clothes into the washer. Then her expression changed and she peeked around the dryer to get a better look at me. Her eyes went wide. Her eyes went wide when she saw my laptop. I quickly closed it and began to shove it into my backpack, but I knew it was already too late. "Hand it over, Wade," she ordered, reaching for the laptop. "I can pawn it to help pay our rent." "No," I shouted, twisting away from her. "Come on, Aunt Alice, I need this for school." "What you need is to show some gratitude," she barked. "Everyone else around here has to pay rent. I'm tired of you leeching off me. You keep all of my food vouchers. That more than covers my share of rent. The hell it does." She tried to grab the laptop from my hands, but I refused to let it go. So she turned and stomped back to her room. I knew what was coming next, so I quickly entered a command on my laptop and locked its keyboard and erased its hard drive. Aunt Alice returned a few seconds later with her boyfriend Rick, who was still half asleep. Rick was perpetuously shirtless because he liked to show off his impressive collection of prison tattoos. Wow, I actually know people like that. Without saying a word, he walked over and he raised a fist at me tighteningly. I flinched and handed over the laptop. Then he and Aunt Alice walked out, already discussing how much the computer would fetch at the pawn shop. Losing the laptop wasn't... Losing the laptop wasn't a big deal. I had 2 spares stowed in my hideout, but they weren't nearly as fast, and I would have to reload all of my media onto them from backup drives. A total pain in the ass, but it was my own fault. I knew the risk of bringing anything of value back here. The dark blue light of dawn was starting to creep through the laundry room window. I decided it might be a good idea to leave for school early today. I dressed all of his media. I dressed as quietly as possible, pulling on the worn corduroys, baggy sweater, and oversized coat that comprised my entire winter wardrobe. Then I put on my backpack and climbed up onto the washing machine. After pulling on my gloves, I slid open the frost-covered window. The Arctic morning air stung my cheeks as I gazed out over the uneven sea of trailer rooftops. My aunt's trailer was the top unit in a stack, 22 mobile homes high, making it a level or 2 taller than the majority of the stacks immediately surrounding it. The trailers on the bottom level rested on the ground and on their original concrete foundations, but the units stacked above them were suspended on a reinforced modular scaffolding and half-havered metal-like latticework that had been constructed piecemeal over the years. We lived in the Portland Avenue stacks, a sprawling hive of discolored tin shoeboxes rusting on the shores of I-40 just west of Oklahoma City's decaying skyscraper core. It was a collection of over 500 individual stacks, all connected to each other by makeshift network of recycled pipes, girders, support beams, and footbridges. The spires of a dozen ancient construction cranes used to do the actual stacking were positioned around the stacks, ever expanding outer perimeter. The top level or roof of the stacks was blanketed with a patchwork array of old solar panels that provided supplemental power to the units below. A bundle of hoses and corrugated tubing snaked up and down the side of each stack, supplying water to each trailer and carrying away sewage, luxuries none available in some of the other stacks scattered around the city. Very little sunlight made it to the bottom level, known as the floor. The dark, narrow strips of ground between the stacks were clogged with the skeletons of abandoned cars and trucks, their gas tanks emptied, their exit routes blocked off long ago. One of our neighbors, Mr. Miller, once explained to me that the trailer parks, like ours... Artist, welcome! We have to take a quick pause. I am just...
Happy birthday?
Oh.
Birthday?
Yes. I'm just a few pages to the end of the chapter. So real quick... Everyone, Artist is one of my mods. He's a wonderful mod. He is also my first follower, and today is a very big day to him. Happy birthday, Artist. Everyone here, Sleep and I want to wish you happy birthday, to the point of needing to put on these awesome glasses. Just for you, buddy. Just for you. And going, Artist, happy birthday. You're 21 now. You get to drink and get sick because you've drinking too much now. So have a wonderful night tonight and have a wonderful time. Your happy birthday ends at midnight, and then you have to be a full-on adult like the rest of us. Yeah, that was it. That was your birthday song. Our neighbors, Mr. Miller, once explained to me that the trailer parks like ours had originally consisted of a few dozen mobile homes arranged in neat rows on the ground. But after the oil crash and the onset of the energy crisis, large cities had been flooded with refugees from surrounding suburban and rural areas, resulting in a massive urban housing shortage. Real estate within walking distance of a big city became far too valuable to waste on a flat plain of mobile homes. So someone had cooked up the brilliant idea of Mr. Miller, as Mr. Miller's put it, stacking the sumbitches to maximize the use of their ground space. The idea caught on in a big way, and the trailer parks across the country had quickly evolved into stacks, like this one. Strange hybrids of shanty towns, squatters' settlements, and refugee camps. They were now scattered around the outskirts of most major cities, each one overflowing with uprooted rednecks like my parents, who, desperate for work, food, electricity, and reliable oasis access, had fled their dying small town and had used the last of their gasoline or their beast of burden to haul their families. RVs and trailer homes to the nearest metropolis. Every stack in our park stood at least 15 mobile homes high, with the occasional RV shipping container, Airstream trailer, or WV microbus mixed in for variety. In recent years, many of the stacks had grown to a height of 20 units or more. This made a lot of people nervous. Stack collapses weren't that uncommon, and if the scaffold supports buckled at the wrong angle, the domino effect could bring down 4 or 5 of the neighboring stacks as well. Our trailer was near the northern edge of the stacks, which ran up to a small, crumbling highway overpass. From my vantage point at the laundry room window, I could see a thin stream of electric vehicles crawling along the cracked asphalt, carrying goods and workers into the city. As I stared out at the grim skyline, a bright sliver of sun peeked over the horizon. Watching it rise, I performed my mental ritual. Whenever I saw the sun, I reminded myself that I was looking at a star, one of over 100 billion stars in our galaxy, a galaxy that was just one of billions of other galaxies in the observable universe. This helped me keep things in perspective. I'd start doing it after watching a science program from the early 80s called Cosmos, which is now back on Netflix with Neil deGrasse. How awesome is that, by the way? Sorry, I got excited. I slipped out the window as quietly as possible and, clutching the bottom of the window frame, slid down the cold surface of the trailer's metal siding. The steel platform on which the trailer rested was only slightly wider and longer than the trailer itself, leaving a ledge about 1.5 feet wide all the way around. I carefully lowered myself until my feet rested on this ledge. Then I reached up to close the window behind me. I'd grabbed hold of a rope I'd strung there at waist level to serve as a handhold and began to sidestep along the ledge to the corner of the platform. From there, I was able to descend the ladder-like frame of the scaffolding. I almost always took this route when leaving or returning my aunt's trailer. A rickety metal staircase was bolted to the side of the stack, but it shook and knocked against the scaffolding, so I couldn't use it without announcing my presence. Bad news in the stacks. It was best to avoid being heard or seen whenever possible. There were often dangerous and desperate people about, the sort who would rob you, rape you, and then sell your organs on the black market. Descending the network of metal girders had always reminded me of old platform video games like Donkey Kong or Burger Time, which Burger Time was amazing if some of you are too young to ever play. I seized upon this idea a few years earlier when I coded my first Atari 2600 game, a Gunter rite of passage, like a Jedi building his first lightsaber. It was a Pitfall ripoff called The Stacks, where you had to navigate through a vertical maze of trailers, collecting junk computers, snagging food voucher power-ups, and avoiding meth addicts and pedophiles on your way to school. My game was a lot more fun than the real thing. As I climbed down, I paused next to the Airstream trailer 3 units below ours. DK, that's right. Where my friend, Miss Gilmore, lived. She was a sweet old lady in her mid-17s, and she always seemed to get up ridiculously early. I peeked in her window and saw her shuffling around in her kitchen, making breakfast. She spotted me after a few seconds, and her eyes lit up. "Wade," she said, cracking open her window. "Good morning, my dear." "Good morning, Miss G," I said. "I hope I didn't strike you or startle you." "Not at all," she said. She pulled her robe tight against the draft coming in through the window. "It's freezing out there. Why don't you come in and have some breakfast? I've got some soy bacon, and these powdered eggs aren't too bad, if you put enough salt on them." "Thanks, but I can't this morning, Miss G. I have to get to school." "All right. Rain check, then." She blew me a kiss and started to close the window. "Try not to break your neck climbing around out there, okay, Spider-Man?" "Will do. See you later, Miss G." I waved goodbye to her and continued my descent. Miss Gilmore was a total sweetheart. She let me crash on her couch when I needed to, although it was hard for me to sleep there because of her cats. Miss G was super religious and spent most of her time in the oasis sitting in the congregation of one of those big online mega churches, singing hymns and listening to sermons and taking virtual tours of the Holy Land. I fixed her ancient Oasis console whenever it went on the fritz. And in return, she answered my endless questions about what it had been like for her to grow up during the 1980s. She was the coolest. She knew the coolest bits of 1980s trivia, Stuff you couldn't